Namaskar. I will now introduce my novel to you, which was published in 2019. The name of the novel is The Return of the Captives. In life, we have the past, present, and future. The past is well known to us, but it is the foundation on which our life rests. But the present and the future, we do not know about it so much. We do not know the future at all. The present also, we do not know it. So, the past is there and it will always be present. The past is never dead. Remember, friends, the past is never dead. This novel is written about the past. Now, I am an avid reader. I read lots of storybooks and novels and anything that I can lay my hands on. Now, I read a lot of books by Western writers on the slave trade in Western countries. I liked those books and I thought there must have been slave trade in India because India was ruled by the Muslims for 500 years and then came the English. So what I did was I read books on ancient history, on general knowledge. I found out that this was true. There was slave trade in northern India. For 3 decades, there was a war in Afghanistan. The Muslim invaders fought against the Hindu and Buddhist rulers of Afghanistan, and Muhammad Ghaznavi defeated these rulers in 1004. And then he fought against the Shahi Raja Jaipal of Peshawar and defeated him also. He took 5 lakh slaves, all Hindus from North India, and he sold them in the slave markets of Persia, Arabia, Mesopotamia, and Central Asia. This slave trade and looting of wealth of northern India stopped on the death of Aurangzeb, who died in 1707. Now, if we study the DNA tests and read the historical records of the Roma, 12 to 15 million of them, we will realize that they are the descendants of the unfortunate Hindu slaves who were taken away from North India. These Roma, after they were, now Timur Lane took over a lot of slaves from North India. When he died, these slaves were set free. They are called the Roma. They could not go back to Hind because of the terrain was not good. Only there were mountains and hills and forests. So they moved towards the west in search of making a living. And there they are today, to this day. Now, in our novel, the hero is Munna. He and his mother Kamini Devi also came as slaves. Now, there was invasion by these Muslim invaders in the north of India. In those days, it was called Hind, the north of Hind, and they went as far as Ujjain. There they fought, killed the inhabitants of all the male inhabitants, looted temples, and took away men and women and children as slaves. Among these slaves was Kamini Devi and Munna. Now Wazir and his sons had come from Uzbekistan to North Hind to buy slaves for their rice fields, wheat fields, and cattle which they kept. And they needed a lot of laborers, so they took slaves from here to their country. Now, Wazir and his sons took beautiful men, women, and children, few men of course, and they crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and they walked on the rocky soil through forests and rivers and hills, and always they made it a point, Wazir always made it a point that they should walk by the side of a river. There are many rivers in Central Asia because in that case they would get water to drink and to wash themselves. As they were going, they killed buffaloes, cows, horses, whatever they could find, and kept the meat for the slaves to eat. This meat they cut in large red chunks and roasted them on top of racks placed on poles, wooden poles. These they stored, and as they went along, the slaves were made to eat them. Now, many Hindu women did not like to eat this meat, so they died. Many people died on the way because of the food habits. But Kamini Devi ate meat, she also ate beef because she had to look after her son. She belonged to a royal family, her husband was a king, and when she came away, she knew that she had lost her religion. So now there was no need not to eat beef or any other meat. Munna also, whatever was given to him, he was made to eat it. Many other little boys who had lost their father, mother, there were also some little girls, they also were told to eat this meat. As they came along, their legs were bleeding, their feet were bleeding, they walked through thorns, rocks, and all sorts of land. So Wazir got some carriages and made some of the very wounded people sit in those carriages. Now Kamini Devi was a very beautiful woman. Wazir saw her and lusted after her. He tried to talk to her, but she avoided him. And then he thought to himself, she's avoiding me now, but when she comes to Bukhara, I will seduce her. Now, as they went along, there were guards guarding these carriages. A river came into view. They stopped the carriages, and the guards moved on to wash themselves. Many prisoners also moved on. This guard, as he walked, put his leg on a pile of dry leaves. A huge snake came out and bit him in the thigh. The guard fell down and died after back arching convulsions. All of them watched in awe. None had seen a man die of snake bite. Then they moved on along the riverside, eating whatever they could get. At night, they slept. They moved during the day but slept at night. Munna and Kamini slept side by side. Kamini looked at her son. His eyes had sunken, his cheeks had become hollow. Then, and she thought of the time in her own palace when she used to observe his birthday. All his friends came, there were fireworks, there were huge feasts, and her son enjoyed himself. Once there was a mongoose that he kept as a pet. This mongoose died, and Munna cried for 2 whole days. Kamini had to console him to bring him back to normal. But then she thought, I was born to be a slave. My son is also born to be a slave. So we have to go on with these people. After some time, when food was getting less, Wazir came and told them, we will reach Bukhara in 1 hour. I have rice fields there, vegetable fields. You will get rice and vegetables and you will eat your fill. So whatever is given to you, you please eat that now. They got into the carriages and crossed the river, which they had to cross to reach Bukhara. Then there was plain land. They walked on it. On both sides were huge fields of rice, cotton, and wheat. As they went, a huge sandstorm broke out. Central Asia is famous for sandstorms. There were caves nearby. Ankita, Munna, and the other people, together with the horses, went into these caves, and the cave was shut with a mud wall, and the sandstorm raged on. In spite of the mud wall, sand went into the caves and entered into the mouths and ears and nose of the people inside. After 15 minutes, when the storm went away, they came out, dusted themselves, washed themselves, and went into Bukhara. One girl was crying very bitterly. She had lost both her parents in Ujjain. But Kamini Devi consoled her and said, "See, this is our fate. There is no need of crying. We have to go along with the flow." So the girl stopped crying. Now Wazir had brought 100 slaves. Out of these, 70 died, only 30 lived. These 30 were made to work in the rice fields, cotton fields, look after the cattle, milk the cows, and do all sorts of work. If they were a little lax in their work, they were whipped by the guards who guarded them. Now Kamini Devi once called Mona to his side and gave him a little notebook with gold coins in it. In that book, she had written the address of her home in Ujjain and the names of some of the neighbors. She gave it to Mona and said, "You keep this and try to escape from here and go to Hind. The Hindus are a peaceful people. You will be happy there." "But Mama," he said, "I'm alone. How can I go alone there?" So Ankita told him, "You have a lot of boys of your age who have come along as slaves. You can make friends with them and take them." So Munna took the notebook and kept it with him. After some time, he noticed that Wazir always used to call his mother to his home. And when she came back, she looked depressed and sad. Munna said, "Ma, if you don't like to go there, why do you go?" "I have to go, son. I am a slave here. I have to go so that Wazir and his sons will not harass you. You will also have to obey him." Like this, her health deteriorated and she died. When she died, Mona cried for 2 whole days, and Kamini Devi had images of gods and goddesses. These Muna threw away, and he became an atheist. "What kind of a god is this?" he shouted. "He makes us beggars and gives others swords to come fight and kill us." Just then, Ankita and her mother, there were 2 other slaves, they came, consoled Munna, took him to their place, and he stopped crying. Much later, Ankita put the faith of God in him. Ankita's mother looked after Munna when he was sick, and she put wet pads on his head. She and her daughter Ankita treated Munna and Ankita treated the old lady, but she died. Before dying, she put Ankita's hand in Munna's and said, "Munna, you look after her. She has no one here." And then the slave boys grew up. They ate milk, eggs, and beef. They ate beef. They didn't mind eating it. And they grew up to be strong lads. And when they grew big, Wazir told them, "You get married to slave girls from among your own group." So Munna and 3 of his friends, Gopal, Ram, and Bharat. Out of these, Munna married Ankita, Gopal married a girl called Sita, and Ram married a girl called Bhanu. Bharat was the youngest. He did not get married. In the evenings, they used to sit together and have meetings and talk about how badly they were treated. They were hardly given one full meal a day, one set of clothes, and the guards beat them for any little fault of theirs. But these meetings were few and far between, because the meetings had to be held when Wazir and his sons were away from the place, because they used to watch the slaves at night. One day when they were having these meetings, one of the boys said, "Why don't we try to escape from here? Will we live here and die here as slaves, beaten for no fault of ours, given nothing to eat, nothing to wear?" Then Munna said, "All right, we will go away, but we don't know the place. Where will we go?" So they decided to be friendly with the guards who were guiding them, who were guarding them. Let us be friendly with the guards, do work for them, go to their homes, massage them. They will tell us about the country beyond Bukhara. Now, once one slave who was guarding Munna was in a particularly good mood. Munna went up to him and started massaging him and speaking nicely to him. And he said, "Sir, from where have you come here? Were you always a resident of Bukhara?" "No," he said, "I come from Samarkand. You see my chinky eyes? My father was a Chinese. He came along the Silk Road to Samarkand. There he married a Uzbeki girl. And here I am. From Samarkand I came here." And he told Munna that Samarkand was the largest trading center in Uzbekistan. It lies along the Silk Road, and all types of people came there and went from there. Now, he went and told his friends that if they had to make a getaway, they had to go to Samarkand. From there, they would go to Hind. Now, in Samarkand, Timur Lane had gone to India, to Hind, fought and brought over many slaves who were the Roma. After Timur died, these people were let loose and they settled down near water bodies and led a nomadic life. Now Munna and his friends started consulting themselves how they would get out of Bukhara. Munna told them, "We have 3 women. We have to take them with us. They will not let us go alone." So they decided that they would take Ankita, Sita, and Bhanu with them. When Ankita, Sita heard this, they were extremely happy and excited. Now here we are not to get any babies, because if we get babies, the men will not take us. They decided not to sleep near their husbands, but stay away. And then Munna and his friends told the other slaves who did not belong to their group, "We will work in the cotton fields, you go and work there." The others were very happy because cotton picking and packing was very difficult. So they started working in the cotton fields, picking cotton, packing them, and so on. One day Wazir liked Munna a lot because Munna was a good worker and he made the slaves under him work very hard. Once Wazir came to where Munna and his friends were working. He liked Munna because Munna was a good worker and made the slaves under him work very hard. So he asked Munna how the work was going on. "The cotton picking is going on well. We will pack them and put them in the godowns." "Now when will the traders come from Samarkand and take this away?" he asked Wazir. "They will come within a fortnight, and they usually go to Samarkand on full moon nights because during the daytime the traders there like to make their men work. Within a fortnight from today, we will have the full moon, and then the carriages will come from Samarkand and take the cotton away." So Munna and his friends worked extra hard, packed the cotton in bales, and stored them in godowns. Now, in the camps at night, Ankita and Sita were met by Bhanu. Bhanu was the youngest of the lot. She told them, "I think that I am pregnant." They were aghast. "How can you be pregnant? You cannot come with us. If the men know of your state, they will not take us." Bhanu said, "But I must go. I cannot bear to stay here. I have not told my husband about this. We will not tell anyone. I must come with you." And she cried. So they consoled her and said that she must keep it a secret if they were to leave Bukhara and go to Samarkand. So the required day came. 10 carriages came from Samarkand. They had a huge feast, and Munna and his friends loaded up the carriages with bales of cotton. Then when the carriages were ready, each of them, 7 of them, got into a carriage each, and the carriages moved off. Munna had told the other slaves not to come because they were doing all the work, they should not come. The other slaves were quite happy that they were not doing any work. So these 7 slaves hid between bales of cotton in 7 carriages, and the carriages moved on, drawn by horses. The drivers had eaten full meals, they went to sleep, the horses trotted on. It was a lovely moonlit night. The- There were birds flying above, trees, tall trees which cast shadows on the carriages, but the slaves, hidden inside bales of cotton, were worried whether they would reach Samarkand in time. Bhanu was praying that her child would be born in Hind, in a free country. She did not want her child to be a slave. Ankita and Sita were also praying for Bhanu that nothing happens to her and that she reaches Samarkand and Hind safely. Munna was very tired because he had worked hard the whole day, so he just fainted. But after a while he came to his senses when he saw something poking against his chest. It was the notebook that his mother had given him with the gold coins. He dared not touch it in case it fell down, but he felt happy now that his mother must be thinking of him and liking what he was doing. He looked up at the sky. At the same time, Bharat also looked up at the sky and they saw a shooting star. They wished that they would reach Samarkand and Hind safely. Gopal was also cramped between bales of cotton. Now they moved on and at last came near Samarkand. Here they heard the muezzin on top of a masjid shouting, Lillah aho lil koha. And then they stopped their carriages. The drivers took their prayer mats, put them under their arms, got down from the carriages, and went to a field near the roadside, put down the mats, and turned towards Mecca to pray. This was the opportunity Munna was looking for. He knocked on each of the carriages. All of them came out. Bhanu was bleeding profusely, so they carried her and they ran to the nearby woods. They put Bhanu down near a bush and went further to get some water for her. They found 2 camps and got buckets of water for Bhanu. They made her drink the water. She looked at her husband Ram and died. So the people from the camps came, dug a deep grave, put Bhanu inside and covered her up with mud and put stones on top of it. Then they went to these tents. These tents were occupied by the Roma. Their leader was Latif. Now Munna and his friends spoke to Latif and asked him to take the 6 of them in for a few days. They would go away soon. The language that Munna and his friends spoke was the language Latif understood. It was the Romani language, the language of the Hindus of North India. These people were also slaves who had come from North India. Then Munna asked them, how is it that we speak the same language? Wazir said, we were brought here by Timur Lane. Then Munna asked, you are Muslims now. Were you always Muslims? No, our forefathers were Hindus. They were brought here and forced to be converted. And so we became Muslims. Then Munna and his friends asked to stay there for a few days, after which they would go away. Latif told them, we are poor people. We beg, steal, and work and make a living. If you are to stay with us, you have to earn your own living. And because you want to stay for a short time, we will keep you, but you have to feed yourselves. So they were happy on hearing this. Latif told them, you have to beg, steal, or work. You can sit in front of masjids on Fridays, you will get alms. And so they stayed. Now, Ram used to go to visit his wife's grave daily. He used to take a flower and put it there. One day when he had gone there, Ankita saw him and consoled him. Ram, she's dead, she's never going to come back. Why do you go there? Ram came back. And then Ankita asked him what he was doing. He said, I am a pickpocket. I pickpockets and I make good money. Of the others, Munna and Bharat and Gopal, first they tried begging. Only Gopal was successful as a beggar. He put a patch on his left eye, closed his right eye, walked with a stick, and kept a tin in his hand. He got a lot of money. Munna and Bharat, however, were beaten up thoroughly when they were stealing. So they decided to do work. They went to Samarkand and stayed in a stable, worked in a stable. They had to feed the horses, bathe them, clean the stables, learn to ride the horses and all that. Ankita and Sita Ankita and Sita tried begging, but they were not successful. So they went into two houses and got work there. Ankita worked in a house where a new baby was born, while Sita worked in another house where she had to clean the utensils and sweep and swab the floor. Ankita's mistress was a good lady, but Sita's mistress was abused her like anything. Anyway, this abuse was much better than the beatings and abuse they got at Bukhara. Now, in Bukhara, Wazir was furious. How is it that 7 people could escape from here and no one know about them? He ordered all his guards and servants to look for these 7 slaves. They searched everywhere, in caves, on hillsides, in plains, but they could not be found. Then Wazir said, This has never happened before. How is it happening now? One guard said, You see, sir, after some time we will see them dead, with worms eating their bodies. So anyway, they could not find the slaves. Life returned to normal once again. But in Samarkand, these slaves lived and worked and begged and managed to live on. Now once, Taimur Lane, when he brought slaves from Hind, when he died, these slaves were set free. They observed this day as the day of redemption. On this day, they had a huge feast and they had stage shows and so on. So that was the day of redemption when someone gave them a buffalo. They cut the buffalo and ate the meat and they had a stage show. In the stage show, they were singing, dancing, and Bharat was sitting in the front row. He watched one girl, one particularly pretty girl, singing when a tambourine was playing. He watched the girl also watched him, and when the singing was over, the lights were off, she came down, Bharat took her hand and they went to the jungles nearby. There Bharat embraced her. But a little distance away, an old man was standing. He saw them, came and told Bharat, You know, this girl is the daughter of Latif, and she is Miriam. You be careful. So Miriam went back, and Bharat also went back to his camp. Now, in the camp that day, after a few days, Bharat got sick. So he was the horse master at the stable told him to stay at home. When he stayed in the camp, Miriam came and placed water pads on his head and gave him soup to drink and took good care of him. In the evening, Bharat was all right and asked her name. She said, My name is Miriam. They all call me Mir and my father is Latif. And she went away. Now, Bharat was inside the tent when he heard a loud noise. He came out and saw that a drunk man was on top of a tree and he was shouting for his wife to come back. He used to beat her very badly and now she had run away and she did not come. On top of the tree in a drunken state, he fell down and broke his skull and died. All the people at the camp came and saw her and they realized how bad drinking was. That night, no one at the camp drank. Usually, they used to drink in the evening, but that day they stopped drinking. Now, um, in the Bharat told Ankita and Sita that he was in love with a girl and he wanted to get married to her. Ankita and Sita wanted to know who the girl was. The girl is Miriam, Latif's daughter. They were aghast. How could you dare to fall in love with Latif's daughter? Do you know that he is the leader of this whole group of Roma? But Bharat was adamant. So Ankita and Sita decided to talk to the men about it. One day, Ankita took her husband Munna to the woods and told him what Bharat had said. Bharat said, "We are poor people. We cannot afford to get married and have babies. How dare he fall in love with Miriam?" But Ankita pleaded with him. In the end, Munna said, "I will first find out from Miriam whether she is also interested in him." So he found out from Miriam that Miriam was indeed interested in Bharat. Then he told Ankita, "Miriam will never get married without her father's permission, so I must speak to her father." One day, Munna went to Latif's house. He was smoking a hookah. He asked Munna, "What brings you here, my son?" Then Munna said, "Munna and Bharat had gone. This Bharat, do you know him? He's not married. He wants to marry your daughter." Latif was furious. "How dare you? She is my only child, my heir, the apple of my eye. And you, vagabond, you want to get married to her?" But Munna said, "Sir, don't be angry. You find out from Miriam whether she is interested in Bharat." Latif didn't say anything, but when he saw Miriam, he asked her whether she was interested in Bharat. "Yes," said Miriam, "I like him and am interested in him." Latif now began to curse himself. He said, "I am to be blamed for this. I should have got her married earlier. And now she had chosen her own mate. She never used to talk back to me before, but now she tells me up to my face that she had found a husband for herself." Then he told Miriam, "See, these people are staying here for a few days. They will go away to their own country. They will take you also with them, and I will be left here all alone, old and friendless." Then Miriam thought, "I love Bharat, but I love my father much more. I cannot leave my father and go with Bharat. Something must be done." Latif also thought the whole night. The next day he called Munna and Bharat to the woods and spoke to them. He said, "Bharat, are you willing to marry my daughter?" "Yes," said Bharat. Then he said, "If you marry Miriam, you have to stay back here. You cannot go to your own place." Munna squeezed his hand and said, "Say yes, Bharat." So Bharat said, "Yes, I will stay here." Then Munna came back to his tent and told them that Bharat wanted to stay back with Latif after getting married to Miriam. He asked them if anyone else wanted to stay back. Ram said, "I also want to stay back. My wife is buried here. I have no one at home. So I too will stay back. And when they move away, what will you do? I will go with them. After all, Bharat will be there." Then now there were only 4 people left to go back to their own country: Munna, Ankita, Gopal, and Sita. Munna and Gopal were working in the master's stable with horses. Now this master had brought 2 beautiful Arab horses from the Arab states. One horse was Dagabaz, the other one was Gulbaz. Dagabaz was a very naughty horse who would not let anyone ride him. And the master had told Munna and Bharat, "You ride these 2 horses and make tame Dagabaz." Now Gopal, though an outsider, when the master was not there, he used to go to the stable and also learned to ride the horses. Now Munna, Gopal and Bharat had tamed the horses. Munna told Gopal and the rest that he would buy these two horses and they would go to Hind on these two horses. So he went and asked the master whether he would sell the horses to him. The master was only too glad because Dagabaz was such a naughty horse. Munna took the gold coins his mother had given him, paid for the horses, and took the horses away. Now they were to go to Hind. Munna had told no one in the camps about their going away because they were all dacoits, robbers, and thieves, and they would certainly harm them if they knew that they were going away. So one day, very early in the morning, he only told Latif, Bharat, and Ram and Miriam about their going away. So one day, very early in the morning, when it was still dark, the four of them rode on their horses. Munna and Ankita sat on the Gavas, Gopal and Sita sat on Gulbas, and they had to ride away. Miriam had made foodstuffs for them and gave it to them to eat on the way. They rode on. Darkness became light. They reached near some forests and got down and sat under the trees and took out the food that Miriam had given them. They ate that food. There was food for the horses also. Just then they saw some dacoits riding by. They were going full speed. They watched these dacoits. These dacoits moved on and they started riding forward. Then they had learned from somewhere that they had to go to Dushanbe and from there they had to go further. As they were nearing Dushanbe, it became night, so they went into the premises of a mosque and slept there. Munna, Ankita, Gopal, Sita and the two horses. At night, Ankita and Sita, they were all fast asleep, but Ankita and Sita heard the music from a shehnai. They got up to see that a fair was taking place. Many women were going to the fair, so these two went with those women, went to the fair, bought bangles and strings to put round their necks, and came back. In the morning, when Munna saw them, he was furious. How did you get these bangles and these strings round your necks? We went to the fair with some women at night. Munna and Gopal scolded them like anything. Never do this again. You will be killed. And so they bought foodstuffs for themselves, for the horses, ate and moved on. They always rode along rivers. They rode on along the Amu Darya river, and after going for some time, they met some traders who were going to Afghanistan. They made friends with these traders, wanting to know how to cross the river. The traders told them, "You come with us. We are going to Afghanistan. First, we will go to Bamiyan to see the Buddhas there. We are all Buddhists. We will see the images of Buddha, worship them, and move on to Afghanistan. You can come with us as far as Bamiyan, then we will show you the way. You are Muslims, aren't you? Why don't you become Buddhists?" They said nothing, but they went with them. Then they crossed the river, rode across hills and plains, and at night stayed in caves or under rocks which were arching forward. They thought that they would be killed by wild animals, but nothing happened, and they reached Bamiyan. Here there were lovely statues of Buddha, and they all prayed. Munna and his friends prayed that they would reach him safely, and the Buddhists prayed also, bowing their heads before the Buddha. From the 2nd century to the 9th century, Bamiyan was a Buddhist religious site. But in the 9th century, the Muslim invaders came and destroyed these Buddha images. And in 2001, Mullah Omar ordered that the Taliban destroy all the Bamiyan Buddha images. So all the Buddhas were destroyed in 2001 by the Muslims. Now these traders went away. Then Gopal heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that they had been sent by Wazir to find them. And once they went away, he was very happy. So they were told which way to go. They moved on now along the Kabul River and came to the Khyber. Here they saw dead bodies lying about, freshly killed men. There was blood all over the place. One man was dying, and wild dogs were pulling at the skin from his body. When Sita saw this, she became hysterical and started shouting. Gopal broke a branch from a tree and drove the wild dogs away. It was very sad to see a living man being attacked by wild dogs. Anyway, they left these people and rode along the Kabul River, crossed the Hindu Kush mountains, and came to Peshawar. In those days, Peshawar was a dirty little town with cramped houses and open drains. They found a place to stay in and they stayed the night there. The next morning, they they went to the river. It was a tributary of the Sindh River. They went to the river, washed their horses, dried them in the sun, and came back to rest for a day or two more. Gopal was saying, if wasn't for these two horses, we could never have come so far. The horses also happily grazed by the riverside. Then they rode on to reach a village, a fisherman's village. They learned that this land was Punjab. They did not know Punjabi, so they decided to stay there in a broken down house and ate fish, pala fish from the fishermen and learnt the Punjabi language. Ankita and Sita also stayed and learnt Punjabi. Then after knowing the language, after Punjab there was Sindh. If they knew Punjabi, they could know Sindh also. But now after finishing their task of learning the language, they moved on. The fisherwomen gave them lots of dried fish and told them to take these fish with them and roast them and eat them on the way. Then riding, they reached two large villages, Sukru and Rohri. Here, these were fishing centers. From here, they had to go to the Sindh, near the Sindh River. It was July now, and it started raining heavily. So the horses could not go in the rain. They rented a fisherman's house, and in the rains, all the snakes about there came out of their holes because the water had seeped in. They killed the snakes with spiked sticks. And when the rain stopped, they again started their journey. They went along the river sides. On both sides they saw wheat, rice fields, and groves of mango trees, lychee trees, and others. These were watered by water from the river. They always kept to the side of a river for drinking and washing. Then it was night, they rested in a grove which was actually a memorial site. Here people were buried. They decided they could rest here because no one would come here at night. And at night, each of them watched, and in the morning, when they came out, Sita told them that she saw ghosts of two people. One, a woman who had committed sati, and another, a Raja, who had lost his right arm. They went to the graveyards and saw actually two graves belonging to these two people. They knew now that Sita had supernatural powers. But after walking about along the riverside and watching the fish dancing there, she forgot her sorrow. The fisher folk had told them that they had to go to the Panchnath River. The Panchnath River is the join of the Jhelum and Chenab rivers. Now, since it was raining a bit, they saw two boats sailing in the river with palm leaf thatches put up on bamboo poles. They hired two boats, one for Munna, Ankita, and Dagabaz, and another for Gopal, Sita, and Gulbaz. They, flowed down the river and came to the join of Jhelum and Chenab rivers, the Panjnad River. They crossed the Panjnad River on a boat bridge. Boat bridges are boats joined breadthwise, and these are fixed to poles fixed to the riverbed. The guards helped them. They crossed this bridge and walked on. After going for some time, they came to a village, and a man was selling tea. He was surrounded by several people. These four also went to have some tea. One of his customers was shouting that he had gone to Calcutta from here. I went through Punjab, then Rajputana. I walked and sometimes I rode on horses and camels. When Munna told them that they were going to Ujjain, then he said, "You don't go by that way, you go by the way of Gujarat, where there are salt marshes." Because going by the way of Punjab and Rajputana was very difficult. So they rode away, they rode on till they came to the salt marshes at Gujarat. These salt marshes lie in the Thar desert of Gujarat and in the Sindh province, which is now in Pakistan. The salt was dry, and in the moonlight they shone like diamonds. After going for some time, they came to Khavda. They rested in Khavda, and there they saw many temples with water tanks in front of them. People bathed in these tanks and went into the temples to pray. They also saw arms with intricately designed bracelets round them and armbands round them. They asked the people what these arms meant. The people told them that these arms were the arms of the women who committed sati. Sati is a custom here. The women die on the pyre of the men and so commit sati. Then at Khavda, they got a place to treat their horses while Ankita and Sita roamed the countryside. After their horses were ready, they rode on. They came to a place where there was a woodcutter's hut. They stayed there for the night and walked on in the morning. In the morning, they were told they were now going to Ahmedabad. On the way, they were told that the Navaratri celebrations were taking place. The starting day of Navaratri is on the first day of the bright lunar month of Ashwin. Here, people worship goddess Durga and they do the Ras and Dandiya dances. Ankita and Sita also joined in the dancing. The organizers of the event invited them to stay with them for 9 days. They would give them 2 full meals and look after the horses also. So, since they hardly ate once or none at all, they stayed there willingly. They stayed there for 9 days, and after 9 days, they moved on. When they moved on the way, they saw a man dying. He had taken dhatura seeds, ground dhatura seeds, in his food. He had borrowed money from a money lender and could not repay it, so he committed suicide. Munna told his friends, "You must never commit suicide. God has brought us this far, surely He would take us to Ujjain." On the way at Anjar, they saw 2 tents put up. A prince had come from Rajputana to find a bride at Anjar. The groom said he was 30 years old, but actually he looked 60. The bride was a beautiful, accomplished woman. But when the groom's side demanded a lot of dowry, the bride's side broke off the marriage. Seeing this bargaining, Ankita and Ankita, Sita and Gopal were thought of themselves. They had got married without wasting a single pie. And then they moved on. They moved on and rested in a grove. In this, as Munna was resting, a big black snake clambered up his leg. He caught the snake by the neck and threw it out. And then they all got up and went on. And then they came to a place which was full of people and goods. Here one man took them in, gave them food, and made them rest for the night, and told them the way to Ujjain. They had to cross the central provinces, and then they reached Jhabua, and from there they crossed a wooden bridge at Barnagar and reached the nearabouts of Ujjain. And then Munna told Ankita, see, the sun is shining here. It must be shining in our houses in Ujjain. Ankita said, who knows whether our houses will be there or not. Munna said, the invaders killed all the people. Surely our houses will be there. So they rode on and went into Ujjain. There they found a place to stay in a room in a milkman's house. Now, staying in the room in the milkman's house, they went and tried to find out Munna's house. Munna had a big house near the fort where the Raja lived. His house was not to be seen. It has been reduced to dust. The banyan tree under which his mother had said that she had hidden some coins, that tree was also not seen. Only a well was there, and Munna remembered it as their well. Then they went on to Ankita's house. They found Ankita's house near two temples. Ankita's father had been a landlord. He had built a house with 12 rooms. The doors and windows were broken down, but the walls and the roof were intact. Ankita remembered this as her house. When she was small, she and her friend had also hidden gold, silver coins under a neem tree in their garden. They found the neem tree, dug up the coins, placed the coins in long bags, stitched them, and wore it round their waists under their clothes. And they decided that they would stay in Ankita's house. They moved on and tried to ask if any of the people there remembered the invasion. No one remembered except an old couple, a man and a woman. And the woman told them that she was in an underground room praying when this invasion took place. Fighting raged on, and when she came out at night, no one was to be seen. Fire was burning all over, and her two sons were also missing. Hearing this, after this, they moved on the city, all over the city. They went to see a bullfight, but they were nauseated by the sight of so much blood. They came away. As they were walking, they heard the boom of a cannon. The Raja or the Rana of Ujjain had died. He was being taken to be cremated. His wife, wearing all her wedding dress and jewelry, was following him. Behind them was a 5 or 6-year-old boy. When they came to the pier, pyre, they put the body of the Rana on the pyre. The Rani climbed to the pyre and sat there. She removed her jewels and handed them over to the divan, and then the little boy lighted the fire, and he cried bitterly as he saw his mother burning to death. Seeing this, these people came back and realized what a terrible thing sati was. Some women were coming with them, and they were cursing the custom of sati. These men, they beat us in real life, and now when they die, they want us to die with them. Why should we die? Then at Ujjain, there are a lot of temples. They went to visit the Ganesha temple, Mahakaleshwar temple, and many other temples. Near one temple, Ankita started crying because her friend Minnie had drowned there. Then they decided to go to Ahmedabad and take a dip in the Ganga, where they would be converted to Hindus again. So they rode across Gujarat. They rode across that place and reached Ahmedabad and took 3 dips in the Ganga each, and they considered themselves as Hindus. Then they went to live in Ankita's house. They called Pandits from the temple and got married according to Hindu rituals. After marriage, they went and stayed in Ankita's house. Muna and Ankita stayed in one room. Gopal and Sita stayed in another room. But though they were married, the women would not allow the men to touch them. They had been harassed so much in Wazir's place that they hated sex. Muna and Gopal tried hard, but they would not have them touch them. So one day Muna and Gopal talked about this. We want children, but how can we get children if the women don't allow us to touch them? Then Gopal found out about a Vaidya who could cure these conditions. They met him, he gave them two packets of powder and told them to mix it in the drinks of the women when after their dinner, either in water or in milk, and gave them two booklets, one to Munna, one to Gopal to read. Munna and Gopal also had no idea about physical relationships. So that night, Gopal placed these powders in the drinks of Ankita and Sita and they drank the liquid water. That night, however, when Munna and Gopal approached them, they did not resist the men but had a physical relationship with them. 2 days this happened. On the third day, they went to pay the Vaidya. He had told them, unless you get success, you will not pay me. Gopal went to pay the Vaidya and got some more medicines. But Munna was angry. Don't get those aphrodisiacs because they are stimulants. We knew nothing before. Now we know everything. We know what to do. And our wives are also cooperating with us. So in this manner, after some time, Sita got pregnant. Sita was Gopal's wife. She was younger than Ankita. She vomited and had morning sickness. Ankita looked after her. After 6 months, Ankita also got pregnant and they gave birth to Sita gave birth to a boy, Ankita gave birth to a girl. The boy was named Om and the girl they named Pari. Now Munna, Gopal, Sita and Ankita were very happy. Munna said, we will always stay together. Om and Pari have now two sets of fathers, two sets of mothers. The children grew up very fast, eating fresh vegetables and milk. And Om and Pari always went about together. Om was the bigger and Pari was the younger one. They went to the river sides, plucked mangoes, raw and ripe mangoes. Raw mangoes they brought home for their mothers to make pickles. They called Ankita Badima and Sita Chotima. Chotima could make lovely pickles with mangoes. Om also taught Pari to fish using a rod and a fishing hook, and thus they enjoyed themselves. But as they grew a little older, Om had a friend called Nilu. This Nilu was a very naughty boy. He decided that he and Om should do mischief, rob fruits from people's gardens, throw stones at goats and sheep. But since Pari was always with Om, this could not be done. So once he gave Pari two tight slaps. Pari cried and ran away. Om was happy that Nilu and he now became friends and Pari was gone. Pari ran away to the Roma camps a little distance away. And then it was evening. A tall, thin woman took her into the camps, gave her water to drink, and gave her some stew to eat in an iron vessel with an iron spoon. Pari was hungry. She did not like to eat the food, but she was so hungry she ate it. Then they called a donkey, put Pari on the donkey and a man from the camp behind her, and told them to go to Pari's house. On the way, Pari met Munna, her father, and Munna took Pari home. Pari told him all that had happened, not mentioning Nilu's name because she was afraid of Nilu. At home, Munna scolded them all for letting Pari run away to that place, and no one got angry with her. But Om was not friendly with Pari anymore. And then Pari grew up. She went to bathe in the river. Once, when she was bathing, she saw a man with a chestnut brown horse riding by the riverside. The man looked at her and smiled. She also smiled back at him. And when she went home, she thought of the man. Now she was 16 years old, and after a week, she came to the river to bathe. She thought that she would not see the man, but she saw him. He was smiling at her. Pari went up the river side and looked at the man. The man smiled at her, and then Pari came back. Then again, 2 days later, she went to the river to bathe, and she saw him bathing there. He swam towards her and embraced her. And then Pari came back home. Again, when Pari went to bed there, that man took it. There was thunder and lightning. That man took her hand and took her to a nearby cave. There was no water in the cave, and he spread a white bed sheet on it, and put Pari down there and made love to her. After some time, he asked Pari, "Do you love me?" "Yes," said Pari. "You do not know me. You do not know who I am. How could you love me?" She said, "I don't care who you are, but I love you." "Then you give me your identity." The man said, "I am Chandramohan, the Rana of Ujjain, and I have chosen you as my love." Pari fainted. The man took water and sprinkled it on her face. "This is true. I am the Rana." Then he took out a ring and put it on her finger. The ring wouldn't fit her, so he strung it round a string and put it round her neck. And he told her, "You go home now. I have to leave Ujjain and go out for 2 or 3 months. When I come back, I will go and speak to your father." He took Pari on his horse and left her at the gates. Now, Chandramohan had to go to his uncle's house, Surya Prakash's house, to get his eldest daughter married. He went there and they settled on a groom for the girl, got her married, and Chandramohan helped Surya Prakash in the rituals, and then he came back to Ujjain together with Surya Prakash, who was his mother's brother and his only living relative. Surya Prakash told him that it was his duty to get Chandra married. So he called negotiators and they got 10 proposals. Chandra looked at the girls, he rejected all of them. Someone had a flat nose, another one was tall, another one was short. He rejected them all. Then Surya Prakash got very angry and said, "Chandramohan, if you have someone in mind, tell me. I will get you married to her." So Chandramohan took Surya Prakash to the river and showed Pari to him. Surya Prakash appreciated Pari and after 2 days came to Pari's house with sweetmeats and fruits. He told Pari's parents that his nephew, the Rana of Ujjain, wanted to get married to their daughter. Munna said, "We are poor people. We drive carriages for a living. How can the great Rana want to marry my daughter?" "No," said Surya Prakash, "the Rana has seen your daughter somewhere and he insists that he will marry her." So Surya Prakash and Chandramohan came to their house, bringing jewels, clothes, etc. And Surya Prakash said that the Rana will not take a single pie as dowry, but bear the cost of the wedding himself. Once when Chandramohan had come, Ankita saw him and looked at him and thought that she knew the man. She thought, and then she realized it was that 5 or 6-year-old boy who was going after the Rani when she was going to perform sati long time ago. Then she told Munna and Gopal about this. They asked, once when Surya Prakash and Chandramohan had come, they asked Chandramohan about this. 2 teardrops rolled down Chandra's eyes. He said, "I am that unfortunate boy." Then Ankita said, "If you marry my daughter, will she have to commit sati if something happens to Chandra?" The uncle was very angry. "How can you say this? The marriage is a few days away and you say this." Then Gopal said, "She is our only daughter. If something happens to her, what will we do?" So Surya Prakash and Chandramohan agreed to ban Sati from their kingdom. They informed all the people of Ujjain that Sati would not be held there. And but Ankita was worried about Pari. She thought of Pari dying in Sati, in the custom of Sati. She would not eat, would not drink, but pined away. And then the marriage was held after a month. Even then, she refused to eat well. Pari got married and went away to her in-laws' place. Chandramohan told them, "You can come whenever you like. You can stay and see how Pari is living." They went and saw that Pari was looked after very well. Om went and stayed with her for a month and said his sister was very happy there. But Ankita would have none of it. After 6 months, Pari got pregnant. And when Ankita heard of it, she was very happy. She ate for a few days, was a little better. But again she thought, if there is Sati, Chandramohan will die, Pari will die, and her baby will also die. So three people will die. And she went on ailing and losing her flesh and becoming very thin. One day she called Munna and said, "Munna, I am going to die very soon. You take me to Allahabad and there uh, book a dharmashala, a room in a dharmashala. Take us all there. I will die and you will float my body down the Ganges, down the Ganga." Munna did that. They all went to a room in a dharmashala in Allahabad, and there Ankita said, "We all have to die, the Raja and the beggar. We all have to pass through one door and come out through the other." And she went on talking till her voice became very low and she died. They all sat there, and in the evening they took her body and floated it down the Ganga and came away to Ujjain. Now Pari had got a baby boy. They all went to visit her. The boy was more than a month old, and when Sita looked at the boy, she noted that the boy looked exactly like Ankita. "Didi, have you been born here?" The baby started laughing and thrashing his hands. Then Om looked at him and said, "Badima, is that you?" The baby started laughing. And when Munna looked at the baby and said, "Ankita, is it you?" the baby put out his hands and wanted to jump into Munna's arms. Munna looked at the baby and looked at them all and said, "We will name this baby as Ankit." And so the four slaves who had come here as slaves now made relationship with the Raja of Ujjain. So this is how the story of the return of the captives ends. Thank you all for listening to me. Namaskar.